So I just watched the 2026 film Backrooms. I thought it was excellent. I think there's some real promise from a young director who is 20 years old. I want to give you some of my thoughts and also a little bit of history onto how this film was created, where it came from, and how I think the history of the film also is reflected nicely in the film itself. By the way, there will be spoilers through this. I would just recommend either watching the movie. If you're a person who likes to watch YouTube videos of horror movies or even read the Wikipedias, apparently that's a thing, welcome. I'll try my best to be just as creepy and informative, but yes, there will be spoilers coming up. So a little bit of a history of how Backrooms was created. Could be some incorrect internet sleuthing, but from what I can gather, about 2019, a 4chan post was created about post your favorite weird, places that you've come across. And it doesn't have to be, a dank, dark basement. It can be a weird office space that's completely empty with fluorescent lights, liminal spaces that just make you feel unsettled. This turned into a creepypasta, which is a place where people write fiction, horror fiction, and sort of trade it to each other about someone going to a doctor's office and talking about the nostalgia and the weird, empty car spaces that were around this office building, going in there and clipping through a wall. Clipping is where you describe, say, a video game character maybe moving through a wall. It's a real world situation, but you're sort of falling through a wall all of a sudden, or the floor gives out. And there's that sense of the almost real and the bizarre colliding together. That's I think what's really captured well in this movie. From that creepypasta about this endless series of mazy backrooms comes Kane Parsons, who creates a 9-minute horror film, starting off as like a found footage film, real life, a bunch of young guys. Hey, we can do one more wide shot and that's it. They're making a film. And then the main character holding the camera falls through the floor in a very video game way and is in the Backrooms. This was all created in Blender, which is animation software, which is really incredible. Even now, it looks and feels so much like found footage of a 90s VHS camera. The visuals are in that film from the YouTube video and the feature film are, of course, incredible, really creating a sense of just fully lit but fluorescent lights that make you feel a bit sick. The sound design of that film and this feature film is really great. And that's what I think really adds to found footage as a genre. You can hear the bumps of the microphone, the sound of the lens zooming in, the fluorescent lights buzzing, the soft padding of the footsteps. Combine that with the sort of uncut nature of a lot of found footage, long takes. We're used to a lot of quick cuts with horror films. Found footage a lot of the time does a great thing of doing really long takes and you're there, it's your point of view. So that is an incredibly well received and popular YouTube video. I think it's got like 80 million views now. And it gets made into a feature film called Backrooms. In the 2026 feature film, we meet Clark, who is a furniture salesman. He is living in the furniture store, which does have that weird sense of reality mixing with the fake reality of the furniture store. Already some, great connections there. And odd things are happening with the lights. He goes to investigate and he falls through a wall. He clips through a wall. It looks like a seemingly solid wall. And just like in a video game, sometimes you just glitches out and you fall through it and he's in the Backrooms. Very similar to the Backrooms of the YouTube series. It's pissy brown, yellow wallpaper, an empty office building that's been abandoned, that sort of vibe. And as he goes through the maze of the Backrooms, he realizes there's something there, of course. That's not really a huge giveaway. The idea of the real and the unreal of the furniture store is also, I think, really well replicated in a lot of different ways that he frames and some maybe tricks of the light. When we go to the furniture store, it's a bland Americana suburban furniture store with 2 cars and a huge empty car park, right? And above the furniture store, when I looked, it appeared that the clouds and the sun were painted on or fake. It could have been a trick of the light, but I think there's a few of those moments where you have these big wide shots of areas and it looks fake and unreal. Those are some elements that shows to me a filmmaker and a production company and cinematographer and all the wonderful people who work on films, including the director, creating something that adds up to not just the scary parts in the jumps, the jump scares. It adds up to a general sense of dread. When I was working in a shopping center, it can get really weird, especially if you can't see outside. So you'll be in a store with fluorescent lights and blaring music trying to sell expensive shoes that were made for $5 in Cambodia to people. And you'll go, oh, time for me to go outside and have a break from the store. And you'll go sit on a bench in the middle of the shopping center where the sun isn't coming through. It's more fluorescent lights, but just a different color. And you'll be sitting there with a fountain next to you, like a fake stream and rubber plastic plants, and you'll eat a sandwich and you'll feel a general sense of dread. That might be just from being in retail, generally speaking, can really cook your brain. But for me, there was definitely a sense of like unease. And there's just those little moments in Backrooms that reinforce that, which I absolutely really, really loved. The middle part of films, I think, can sometimes waver and they can sometimes slow down, especially with horror movies if you're going scare after scare after scare after scare, right? So really the end of the first act, start of the second act is really a large chunk of found footage roaming through the back rooms, tension builds, screen goes black, and then we jump to Mary. And she hasn't heard from Clark and she investigates the furniture store and she goes into the bloody back rooms. Would you believe it, Mary? It wouldn't be a great horror film if she did go into the back rooms. One of the main characters. She falls, she clips through like a glitchy video game into the back rooms, and that's where she finds Clark. He does a great job of just being quietly insane. He finds Mary, they find each other, and Clark has lost his mind in the back rooms. He finds comfort in the weird reverberations, and he sort of voices this idea of like the back rooms being a place that sort of remembers but can't fully, they'd say, it's like someone drawing a dog if you just describe it. They've never seen a dog before and you tell them what a dog is and then they draw it. This is what we think the back rooms is. Maybe it's another dimension. It's a place that's sort of trying to figure out what reality is and copy it. Also, while this is happening, Mark Duplass, hello, again, found footage, creep mastermind and general guy who supports young filmmakers, plays a guy who's somehow involved in maybe monitoring this situation. He sees the ad of the furniture store that Clark's in and he goes, okay, shit, the back rooms is actually in this furniture store. So there's, again, some nice little bits of someone's watching, someone's monitoring this weird behavior, which again is implied in some of the backroom stuff that Kane Parsons did in the short films on YouTube. So Clark is there and he introduces this horrible monster that's sort of the pirate costume that Clark dressed up in when he was doing his infomercial, smashed into a huge towering person, which, very cool again. You got some Blender stuff, you got some real effects stuff. The monster is not a CGI creation. It is an actor, Robert Bobrowski. Again, let me just murder some names. I'm so sorry about that. Plays a pirate Clark. He's a extremely real, tall man who I think has been in other Alien films playing xenomorphs and stuff. He's just a real super tall, gangly guy who puts on these costumes and does amazing things with his bodies. He plays this 7 foot tall, super lengthy pirate hybrid backrooms monster that kills Clark, that chases Mary. Mary gets away and runs into Mark Duplass and people in suits. They explain that they are sort of measuring the back rooms. They are exploring the back rooms. They don't really know what it is, but they want to sort of figure it out, and they're sort of running tests, and they are aware of the monster and, studying him and things like that. The only thing I would have liked from this movie, again, if you're in this far, I've spoiled so much of it. I would have liked maybe a jump forward, a future where Mary is like sort of going through all the rooms, all the reverberations of her own memory, her own life, and studying it and exploring it. And she joins Phil and she's able to explore the physical manifestations of her own memory and, study what's been happening in her past maybe there's a mum monster and she can see it. I don't know, some sort of like little bit of Easter egg. But look, overall, Backrooms I think is a great time at the cinema. I really recommend it. And I believe there's been some mentions of Kane Parsons already getting some talks about future movie deals, because I think this was made for like under 10 million and it's already made $100 million. Sometimes I'm a bit hesitant about, making everything a multiverse and 7, 8, 9 sequels, but if it's anything as promising or as interesting, as visually, pleasing and scary as this Backrooms, I'm open to it. Congratulations to everyone making this movie. Go see it at your local cinema. Cuddle up to that person that you really like, and watch a horror movie.